You're listening to the Waypoint TV Podcast Network, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Midway USA brand product designers have one straightforward goal: develop high-quality, technically sound products and deliver them to customers at reasonable prices. If you are immersed in the shooting sports industry and pay close attention to every single detail, you know our products are built right and stand up to everyday use. Who has shooting mats and range bag systems to hunting clothing and just about everything for the outdoors? Log on and shop 24/7 with super fast shipping. MidwayUSA.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth gear for all types of weather, all types of terrain, all types of budgets. It's clothing that just works. Check them out at huntworthgear.com. And right now, they still, if you haven't gotten all of your Christmas shopping done or bought yourself those things that you were thinking about, and you missed the last sale, they currently have 25% off of everything on the site using code HOLIDAY, HLDY 25. So that ends Christmas Day at midnight. So you still have a chance if you don't get what you wanted in your stocking, or you're looking to get something just for yourself. But one of the things they do have on their website, one of my more frequently worn items they don't talk a whole bunch about, is the Harrison hoodie. So it's like a polyester, kind of like stretchy, mid-weight hoodie, like a performance material. They have that in Tarn or Disruption, and they have some other different ones that aren't full camo, that are like half and half. But those are on sale. Those are $40. So with that 25% off, you can use that on top of that. So it ends up being $30 a piece. Really do enjoy that, just for, just as a hoodie to wear, or a lightweight option for like some of that early season type stuff. But really is one of my, I guess, the unsung pieces of Huntworth in my collection. I really do like that one. So good deal, $30 for a hoodie. Kind of hard to beat, especially for one of the athletic ones. And then for Latitude, over there, they've still got some of the Method 2s, 30% off. So just over $200 for their 2-panel saddle. So definitely go check them out at latitudeoutdoors.com. And they must have been just ravaged by their Black Friday sale, because there's a lot of stuff that's out of stock. But that Maverick saddle, I'm telling you guys, that one for even the retail price of $199 is hard to beat for a very simple, very usable saddle. So go over there, check that out at latitudeoutdoors.com. And also, Spartan Forge, get over there. If you haven't been using that, I feel like I use it every day, whether it's I'm using it for navigation to try and find something wherever I'm traveling for someone's house, or e-scouting, constantly looking at the LiDAR. I mean, heck, today was the day for Idaho, and I was going back through my pins in Idaho and then looking at the LiDAR and seeing what I would do differently. Like, I think I have a problem. But, yeah, definitely check that out. We got to say thank you to everybody. Kanati, Zinger, Big Shot Targets, Lucky Buck, everybody. This year's just been great for us. This podcast kind of goes into back to some of the NRC stuff. We got an NRC meeting coming up on Thursday, so we kind of fast-tracked this podcast, bumped it up in front of another one, just so maybe if somebody it piques somebody's interest, and gets them out there to go to attend the meeting, or kind of brings up some of this. We're just talking a little bit about Michigan's management, the APRs, any of that stuff. Really a nice, cordial conversation of like how we think Michigan is doing, and if there's anything that we think that they could do better, and what we as hunters can do better for the deer herd in the state of Michigan. So this one is a good conversation. I think it's a conversation no matter what state you're in, you should be having about managing the deer herd and seeing what needs to be done to take care or better care or keep this resource available to us. But as always, guys, thanks for listening. Appreciate it, each and every one of you. All right, everybody. Adam back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And today we're going to talk maybe about a little bit of controversial stuff, kind of something that like everybody online is complaining about. And I don't think it's real difficult for us to like come together on this. We talked with Jordan Hoover about like kind of how the regulations were made and stuff like that. And I got Josh Arbogast on here. He's a Michigan guy, and he's been pretty vocal on, making a difference in Michigan, whether it's in the changing of regulations or any of that stuff. But he's one of the few people that I've seen, other than, guys like Jordan and, some of the bigger names, like who you would expect, the Bob Joneses and things like that, who are speaking out, but also like saying, hey, we got to, if we're going to just complain or bitch, we need to actually get out there and start to do some things. And Josh is doing that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, amongst some other things. So how are you doing tonight, Josh?
I'm good, man. Just, hanging in there, trying to grind it out for the rest of the season.
Yeah. So let's talk about your season a little bit. Like, I know we would talk to you, went out of state at least once. And so when did your season start, and how's it going like to this point?
So early October, I took like a 4-day weekend, the very first weekend of bow season. I wasn't in the woods on opening. Oh, I was, but not till after work locally. Anybody who knows anything about me, I'm right outside Detroit, like close to the city. So I don't do a whole lot of hunting by my house. Just not a lot of opportunity and good properties by my house. So when that weekend hit, I shot up, usually hunt like the Thumb area, mid-Michigan, kind of a little bit over in there. And I shot up there, took a 4-day weekend. And then towards the very first week of November, and I'm pretty much a weekend warrior, outside of maybe 3-4-day weekends sometimes. But first week in November, I actually went down to Illinois for 9 days. And that, when I tell you that had an impact on my life, and I experienced like some of the coolest things that I could ever experience in the woods without harvesting a deer, it was amazing. And then, coming back here, and, now I'm back in Michigan, and the switch flipped for me. Things are a little different here. And it's just been a grind since I got home. So it's been a little bit different of a season for me. I've been trying to target one deer because he slipped me last year, and he's kind of got my number. So I usually don't do anything like that, but that's kind of what's been going on, and it's really put an impact on my sightings with other deer and things like that. But it's been fun.
So your trip to Illinois, was that I know you do a lot of stuff solo. Was that a solo trip, or was that with a few guys?
So I went down there with Ryan Reagan, who's a buddy of mine. I think he's actually on your side of the state from the west side. We went down and scouted in May. We scouted like 3 or 4 properties, and then we ended up kind of narrowing things down. We hunted 2 of them, and ultimately we ended up in one, and just pretty much for 9 days. And we were just kind of breaking things down together, which was cool. It was kind of that, it was only 2 guys, but it was kind of that deer camp feedback. What did you see? What are they feeding on? What's working? How are they moving and things like that. So, man, it was an amazing experience watching the way deer behave in different terrain. I've never been a hill country hunter, so that was a whole new experience from me. And just, man, the run-ins with bucks that I had down there, going in blind the first hour of the first morning, I passed. I mean, when I say passed, I mean this deer ran right under my stand. I could have jumped on his back. He was mid 130-inch buck, just trailing a doe. I got, the whole thing on video. Like it was just like, wow, did that just happen? And then three more bucks, and then a couple run-ins with some 140s. I had the last morning I was there, I almost hit two bucks with my truck that were, I mean, one was probably 150 plus. I mean, right in front of my truck. Just like things were just totally crazy. And just, I've been advocating for change here for a long time, but then going down and seeing that was just, I mean, on public land, same thing I do here. It's just a totally different experience. And watching deer chase does and tail does all day long, daylight movement, just the way things behave are totally different in different areas. And I think a lot of people haven't experienced that. And I think that kind of forms people's mindset a little bit that, you never left Michigan. You don't know how things are different in different places when they're managed differently. And man, it just left an impact on me. We we had a run-in with a 150 one night. And I mean, this deer cut up in between us, and we could hear him chasing a doe around in a thicket. I'd say less than 100 yards away. And then right at last light, he popped out, and that deer, he split us. We were kind of set up in a peninsula. We crept in through a creek bank, and we were like, wow, we're going to blow everything out on this side, but we think the best deer is in here. And we cut his track. So we knew there was a good buck in there, and it had rained the day before. And we just crept in there as quiet as possible, jumped up for very first trees around kind of a little peninsula. And he split us right at last light and came in. And he was probably, like I said, this is last light. So, this went on after shooting light, about an hour we were up there while this buck brutally chased this doe around. I've never heard anything like it. Just the grunting, the crashing, thrashing while he chased this deer around in this thicket. And he was probably about 60 yards from me, and he ended up about 25 yards from Ryan. But I mean, like, not shooting light, And he pops out on the bank to get a drink. He ran himself down right under Ryan at 2 yards. And when I seen Ryan's light come on, I was like, okay, deer must have left and it's time to go. I didn't realize Ryan was like turning his green light on his headlamp to look down at that deer. And we got back in the truck. It was just silent. Because, he looked at me and he's like, you ever seen anything like that before? And I was like, absolutely not. But that just made my whole trip worth it right there. So we both came home with tags, but it was one of the best experiences, not only hunting, but just period that I've ever had in my life. And it left an impact on me, man. It really changed my mindset a little bit deeper than where I was prior.
So in that moment or that trip, like when you went down there and scouted, did you set cameras down there so you knew that there were big deer in there? So that's why you didn't shoot that 130 in the first minute?
So yes, I did. I had probably 4 or 5. The camera went dead the last week of August. I put lithiums in it. I only put one camera up. Brian put one up on another property. We just tried to pick out the best areas. We didn't try to tag everything up with cameras or anything like that. I just threw a cell cam out, see what it would do. And all summer long, I was getting pictures. Man, I'd say 4 or 5 different deer that had a possibility of going like Booner class, like 4 or 5 different deer. I went in, like I said, the camera went dead in late August. I went in and hunted that spot probably like the 3rd or 4th day with no movement. And when I came down, I wanted to go see if my camera was there because I didn't know if it was stolen or just died, because you figure you put lithiums in it, it should give me, a little bit of time. Ended up dying. But when I got down there, I realized we didn't look at the crops. We weren't getting that deep, and we were just looking for buck sign when we were down there. And I realized right across was a bean field that was cut. So that was probably a lot of the summer activity I was getting. And then they had kind of manicured that whole flat that those deer were on. So nothing was hanging around in there anymore. And I was like, oh, this is junk now. So I never went back there. But I got my camera back, which was cool.
Well, I
That was
just
a big
wonder, like, so what's your biggest buck that you've shot anywhere? And then like, what do your standards go like out of state? Cause I've had this conversation with like Michigan Wild podcast, Nate Roosevelt. I give him crap all the time. Because like we kind of talked about a little bit before the podcast, like I like to be surprised and I just like to, like, just going in and doing what you did would be validated for me. And it's more about the story or the hunt than it is like about the deer on the walls. And so like he shot his first deer out of state after, I don't know, seems like it was a lot of trips. And, maybe it was a smaller class deer than even he would shoot in Michigan, but he has like, it's not like you're down there just for 9 days, right? Like you live here, so it changes things. But when, like for me, when I'm out of state, like if I get excited, like, hey, because I think this will come into play later as we start to look at like what our expectations are for Michigan, right?
Yep. Okay. So, I'm funny in this aspect where it's not about inches for me. Okay. So when we start talking about this, everybody wants to throw around the term trophy hunter, and I'll get into my thoughts on that later, but it's not about inches to me. I've never scored a deer that I've shot. I've never had a tape on anything that I've shot. I'd say the biggest deer that I've probably killed in Michigan is about 130 inches, maybe, give or take. But that's not how I gauge my season. My season is based on experience. Totally. It's the adventure for me. So me going down there very first hour, the first day, if I'd have killed something and then came home.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
This episode is brought to you by United Airlines. When you want to make the most of your vacation, book with United. They're an airline that cares about your travels as much as you do. United is transforming the flying experience with Bluetooth connectivity, screens, power at every seat, and bigger overhead bins to help fit everyone's bag. And with their app, you can skip the bag check line, get live updates, and more. Change the way you fly. Book your next trip today at united.com.
Wouldn't have been worth it to me. It's not always about the kill. It's not always about the harvest with me. Man, I love hunting. So even, if I was here and I tagged out first day of the season, I'd almost be devastated. I don't feel as the season goes by and I don't fill a tag or kill something that my season is unsuccessful at all. So that's just not how I operate. And that's just kind of why I passed that deer. It was just like, man, first hour, first day, like if I shoot this deer, I'm going home. And then, it happened fast too. We got back and I started rewinding the footage and I was like, that was tough.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think like if I'm going to be the one that plays devil's advocate on the whole thing, as far as like, Michigan's regulations and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, from what you just said, it's like we should kill all the small bucks because that'll make less big ones. That'll make more of an adventure to try to find them. Right. I mean,
well, see, I don't want to go that far. I've heard people say, if you have restrictions in place that make you destination state, I guess would be the best term, then what makes killing big deer special? And it's a very valid point. Guys that love to chase mature deer or, whatever your definition of that is, it's such a broad thing. But I see a lot of room for improvement here without being an actual destination state per se. I think that we do a lot of things wrong. I think that we encourage a lot of negative behavior. And I think if we place some regulations on things, then we can kind of nip a lot of these things that we encourage here. I mean, we encourage baiting, we encourage all these things because we don't enforce them, or it's almost become like a lawless state. And the more time I spend in the woods and fall in love with it and the process, man, it's painful.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we'll get to the Michigan stuff here. It's just I wanted to see, like, going out of state, like how, because I feel like it's strange, and I don't know how to, like, there's no way to quantify it to say who's quote unquote doing it better or whatever, because like for me, who says, like, I'm a average hunter, or like maybe above average hunter, to go to like Kansas, there's bigger deer than I'm used to seeing everywhere. So when I kill a big deer for me, and I think a good example of this, and that's what I was gonna that's why I was kind of probing you for, like, what your standards were, because I know you're friends with, like, Matt Lair.
Yep.
And it's the same thing. It's like he goes down there and he'll kill, he says like 125, 130, pretty much all day long. That's what he's like targeting. So to be like, okay, well, I'm going to go and kill 150s or whatever. And that's like, even talking with my buddy Nate, it's like, you've been on the property, unless you have a whole bunch of cameras or those deer are there. Like that first deer that you saw the first day might have been the biggest deer on the property.
Yeah, but it would have ruined my hunt.
Yeah, no. I mean, I understand that, but but it's like, does Illinois or Kansas do it better? Do they have less hunters than Michigan? Do they have less deer or a better buck to doe ratio? Like, are they managing it better, or is it just, as a Michigan guy who has to deal with all the crap that we have to deal with here, it's easier to go down there and find a deer that's a bigger class because you're not dealing with all the shit that you deal with in Michigan? It's a very difficult thing to like put it apples to apples, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say, if I was gonna answer your question with just a very basic answer, when I went down there, I wanted to lay eyes on a 140-inch deer. That deer I seen, like I said, without putting a tape to something, you really don't know. But I know for sure I seen some 140-inch deer that would have been in within 100 yards, but not bow range, right? So that was enough for me, and my expectations was to go down there and, just get eyes on something that's bigger than what I usually see here. I glass big deer all year long, in the fields, but come hunting season, everything changes. So, you brought up Matt. I sent Matt the video of that deer when I passed on him, and he just basically is like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And I was just like, I love hunting, man. I care. The longer I get into this, the more I care about being in the woods more than harvesting something, which, that's out of the norm. And I understand that. I care more about becoming more of a conservationist and being informed on what's going on. And, it's kind of hard to do when you're out in the woods all the time, like during season. But outside of season, I try to keep up on things. And if I would have just went down there and just shot the first deer I seen, I don't think I could have lived with myself for the rest of the week. So it's different. It's totally different. I don't know who does it better. I know the mentality of hunters is a little bit different. I mean, me and you have talked about when you went down to Missouri and guys were like, well, you're going to shoot a 130. The mentality of hunters is a huge part of this, because ultimately this lies in us. They can make all the regulations in the world, but it ultimately relies on us to make our herd healthy and balanced.
Yeah, I mean, that's the deeper part of it. So I guess ultimately, last year when they put up, who wants to be on the NRC or like for this committee, like you were one of the big voices that was out there saying like, hey, if you guys want to actually do something about it, like throw your name in the hat. And you did that. You didn't get chosen.
Nope.
And then have you attended some of the NRC meetings or?
So I did. I actually I didn't make it in the building. I went to an NRC meeting when I was sick. It's hard for me to get a Thursday off work. They always fall on a Thursday. That's dead center in the middle of my work week. I went down, I drove all the way to Lansing and I was sick. I ended up puking in the parking lot and then driving home. So I attempted to go, but I never made it in the building. I had like a 4-page speech prepared and it went south on me real quick. But yeah, no, this is still in my cards to get to these meetings. I'd really like to attend the one on Thursday if I can squeak it with work. Because I know Chad Stewart's going to be in the building, but I try to follow them and the memos or, meeting notes that they put out and things like that. It's tough, because it's not all related to deer hunting either. So you kind of got to hand pick through all of them and see which ones are related to you. And then you may not be able to get off that week or it's tough.
So from that point, like, as you had said, like, it's on us, like it ultimately lies like within us to like make those decisions. I personally think that it's really difficult. It will be, and that's the toughest row to hoe unless, it would never happen. So like, it's almost not even worth wasting the breath on, but that you took a season or 2 seasons where nobody killed any bucks. Like there was a 0 buck season because I think something like that, like, so for you or I or whatever. And like, I've said it before, but I'll never forget like watching one of the episodes of Dream Season where it was like these guys, that was just like film your own hunts, go out on public or whatever. And there were these guys in Ohio who like literally parked on the side of the road, hopped over a guardrail, went 100 yards into the woods and killed like 150. And I was like, there's no way that that's real. Like that can't be real because, at that time, everything on TV was the Lee and Tiffany type stuff. It was the Drury's, and it was stuff that was not attainable. And so like for you and I to go out of state, for a guy to go to Kansas, to go to, Illinois, Southern Illinois, to Iowa, even Ohio in some parts, like to get out of Michigan and to actually see like exactly what you said, deer acting like deer, like what you see on TV or like these, I guess now the better thing would be like on YouTube or whatever, to actually see those things and then to see big deer that are somewhat like not pressured or like 100% on edge. I don't think we have a lot of that here in Michigan, and that's not the normal, regular, everyday hunter experience. Now, I know that there's big deer in Michigan. I know that there's guys that kill them and there's guys that do it on public. And I think, some of our areas up north where they do have the APRs, you're starting to see some of that come back. And there's some really big deer coming out of those counties. But I think for the everyday, I want to shoot my buck guy, or I want to get a deer or whatever, they're, maybe inherently they are, part of their own problem, but they're not seeing these deer anywhere in the woods, like be it out of state or wherever. So it doesn't seem realistic. It's like me watching the Dream Season and saying like, yeah, that must be nice. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm not a big like APR guy. I'm fine with it to an extent, but I have a different mindset because I killed a buck over there that was a 1.5-year-old buck that had 4 points on one side. And I have a buck right next to it that's a 2-year-old buck that's a 6-point with no brow tines at all.
Mm-hmm.
And like up on our property and in the UP, the genetics are weak brow tines or no brow tines. And so like my father-in-law seen 100-inch 4-point up there. That was certainly an age-old deer, but doesn't meet the antler point restrictions for the UP. So we have to let it go. And I literally did a podcast with Johnny Stewart this morning, and I asked him about like the PA thing and about their antler point restrictions. And he said, there's more bigger deer, but he said and I've seen this in the UP as well, because when they switched to the 3-on-1 side a long time ago, which ended up that you're seeing a lot of spikes and 4 points, and some of these weak genetics get through. And I'm not the spike is always a spike guy, but I'm saying with the lack of brow tines, right? In every 2-year-old or 3-year-old buck that has 4 points on a side is getting waxed. And so you're still not getting to see the bigger bucks. I mean, some of them squeak through, but I mean, we've been doing APRs in the UP now on our property for the better part of 30 years. And aside from now doing mineral and some food plot stuff, we didn't really see any change. We did see all the little bucks, but we weren't seeing any of the big ones. So I'm more of a 1-buck kind of like choose your own adventure style versus a mandatory APR.
Yeah. So what you said about seeing all the weaker genetic deer, that is from what I can find in, everything that I've considered, right? And like, cause looking into 1-buck, looking into APR, that's the huge downfall to having an APR state, without a doubt, because, like for instance, Christian Green, he's over on the west side. He shot a big 6-point. I mean, it's beautiful deer, but it probably wouldn't meet that, that qualification. And that is a problem. But my offset to that is the 1-buck state. I don't think that we as a state, I think we've created a culture, and this is all I don't have any data to support this. This is just the reason why I lean towards APR over 1-buck. I think that we've created a culture in Michigan that is okay with just shooting the first deer we see, going home, and then not going back out. I think a lot of guys, the last time I looked at it, it was around 6% fill their second buck tag. And it might have been up a squeak last year towards 7. I can't remember exactly last year. I know it was 6% 2 years ago when they started to keep track of this. But I don't think that we've created the culture here that facilitates it, that allows these bucks to grow up and get a better age class, which ultimately is what did happen in Pennsylvania. Was the age class of the deer got bigger. The deer themselves got bigger. I mean, I think when I looked, I wrote it down. When they went to an APR, the average field weight of an adult doe increased from 96 pounds to 110 pounds. So even for the meat hunter, he has an extra 14 pounds of meat, which to me, that seems like a benefit for everybody, even if you're shooting does. And we've created a culture. I mean, the doe problem here is an issue in itself, where we just don't shoot does in Michigan. And that's a problem. That takes away a lot of that forage to allow these deer to get bigger when you have such a huge deer population. I mean, we have 2 million deer here. That's pretty big. And no matter what they do with the regulations, I don't think they're encouraging doe harvest well enough. But no matter what they do, we don't care. We don't care. We want to go get our buck, be done. I mean, a lot of these guys are done. You know, if they go, they may hunt 1 week a year in deer camp. Hey, that's your prerogative. And anytime it's legal, I'll encourage things. But whatever's legal, I wouldn't bash somebody. You know what I mean? If you take a legally harvest buck, that's your prerogative. But I just don't think we've created the culture to allow one buck, because I think it still lets what's been happening continue. I think we'll stay in the same cycle. I mean, around those numbers, I think we've harvested about 150 deer this year. That saves like $10,000 maybe, and 9,000 somewhere in there.
So I think on and that does make sense as far as that whole thing is concerned. There's a couple things there. Like, one, I think starting out, we at least have some more accurate reporting in place, right? So, which
is a huge benefit.
Well, but now they can say, like, how many of those bucks had 4 on a side, how many had 3 on a side, and how many were, so realistically, let's say that's 75% accurate. We're 100%, 1,000%, 1,000,000% better than we were just guessing, or from a check-in station or something like that. So now we can at least look at those numbers, and maybe in a year or two, we can look and see like what that actually really looks like. We will be able to, with that data, assuming that they're even using that for, instead of just putting their thumb in the air and saying, okay.
Craven, the hunter, who uses all the methods of the animals.
This Thursday, witness the making of a new Marvel villain.
Once you're on his list, there's only one way off.
Aaron Taylor Johnson is Craven the Hunter. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
This episode is brought to you by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. There's a lot to be thankful for this season. For one, I'm thankful you can get NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV right now for only $209. It's exactly what you need as we head right into the playoffs. You can invite your friends over. Maybe you have a multi-view. You could have 4 different games, one for you, one each for the 3 other friends you invite. You can change the games around. As soon as the outcome becomes pretty certain, dump that game, put in another one. I've become the multi-view master. The moment the one of the games is losing steam, I'm ready to move right in and move it for another one. Build your own multi-view, one of my favorite words. Thank yourself this holiday season. Get NFL Sunday Ticket for the rest of the NFL regular season for just $209. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS. Terms and embargoes apply. Device and content restrictions apply. No cancellations.
This is what it looks like. I mean, like the coyote stuff, right? They got the lawsuit going on because, and I forget the name of the act or whatever that they're going against, but regardless,
I can tell you, I see a noticeable change in coyotes this year too.
But they're, we'll assume that they use that information for good and to make change and to make a scientific argument, right? So we should be able to see, like, how many deer have been harvested with these point restrictions. So we say, look, okay, it's what really does that impact make? B, we can look at it and say, okay, and this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. And we mentioned like the whole Tennessee thing where they can kill 2 bucks. They just can't kill them on the same day. How many of those deer were taken during rifle season and were taken on the same day? And then, I guess you could do that in bow season too, but you could parse that out and say how many were taken. Because I think a lot of the 2 bucks, and most of the guys that I know that shoot 2 bucks, they shoot them with a rifle on like opening day, and it's just a great day. And that's another like thing that is, as far as like managing the resource and all of these other things, like I'm somewhat like you in the fact that like you're chasing the adventure rather than the harvest. And like, for me, it isn't about the antlers or the kill or whatever, but it's about that experience. And so like a perfect example of this is like at the very core of it, we did our kids rifle camp in the UP, right? So my daughter shoots a deer Thanksgiving morning, and it's, brutally cold and everything. And my niece shot one that night. All the kids go out there and they just have a ball. There was no tracking because of the rifle, but, watching us gut the deer and then dragging it back and throwing it in the trailer and all that stuff. And those memories for them, and it shouldn't just be for kids, right? Mm-hmm. Like you said, if you shot that deer on that first day, then you're just sitting in your trailer twiddling your thumbs, right? Until your buddy calls you to come track one or help. And it's that experience, it's that tailgate beer, it's all that stuff. So like, to me, that's the hard thing. And, like I've got a buddy who's, he was actually up at our deer camp this year, but he's got cancer, being treated for chemo. He got out, he shot a 6-point this year, which very much could be his last deer. And if we say, okay, well, you can only shoot 4 on one side, then we just took away that last tailgate beer, that last harvest, that last whatever. And so that's why I'm more of a $1 type guy than an APR guy, because like I said, it's like a choose your own adventure thing. And it's a, we'll have more data to be able to say which is better. But that's why I was asking too, is like, what is your standard? Like when you go to the woods, is it, and how many big deer have you shot? And if it's just about the big deer. Now, if we were going to talk resource, we could look at what we're doing right now. We're in the middle of, Michigan's second rifle season, AKA muzzleloader, which if they took bucks off the table for firearms right now and just made it a doe harvest, which is what they want anyways, that could change that as well. So, yes,
which is, to me, when they did this whole shift that they had, and I don't want anybody to get the notion, going back to this term trophy hunting, man, when I go to the woods in Michigan, I'm looking for a buck that's wider than the ears, like, to put it simple. Okay. Like, I'm looking for 3.5-year-old deer. Like I said, I do a lot of glassing in the summer, so I'm looking to hold out for something, that ultimately gets me excited. And I understand that's different for everybody. But to go back, there's so many problems with the things that they've put on the table with them encouraging more doe harvest. And like you said, the muzzleloader. Well, if you're going to have any legal firearm and you want to encourage doe harvest, just taking bucks away from kids wasn't going to do it. It's just not. And they did have the early antlerless on public, which I wasn't a fan of because I'm a public hunter. But I get it. You're trying to control something. You're throwing things at the wall hoping that they'll stick. But like the urban archery, guys can shoot bucks during that time. Why not make that the doe only harvest? You're having this late second rifle season, just call it what it is. It's a second rifle season, and now it's expanded to the whole lower peninsula. Make that a doe season, because I feel like every regulation that they put forth, they just make it easier to shoot bucks. And at one point, I remember looking at a stat where it said over 50% of the bucks harvested were a year and a half. That is a giant number. And if we're just making it easier and easier to do this, not trying to kill anybody's adventure, but it's not healthy to keep this up. Like, we've been going at this for so long, and I feel like things are changing with the mentality of a lot of hunters, and I think we're all kind of see it slowly changing with the younger generation, and things are coming in. Call it good or bad. It has its benefits. It's got major cons, but like social media, right? Kids see what's out there and they want the big buck because that's all they see. And, it's kind of always been that way. Like you brought up, the Drurys and all these different shows. People always wanted the big bucks, but now kids are seeing that it's available to them on state land, that they can just put in the work and, and get on some of these deer. And it's almost ruining the mindset of a lot of people, but it's also what people are looking for now. So, man, it's so tough, but they need to encourage some regulations that allow these things to change, because hunter recruitment is down and they complain about it every year. But what are you giving the people what they want? And I feel like they're just making it easier to make things worse at times. I thought the DMI had great ideas. Like, I was for a lot of the things that they were for. And I think our biologist is seen as the enemy a lot of times, when I really don't think he is. I think his hands are tied on a lot of issues by the bureaucrats in Lansing. And I think every time they try to propose a change, the NRC votes it down. And it's pretty unfortunate.
So since you pay attention to this more than I do, was there a change on the NRC board? Didn't somebody retire or step down or something recently?
I think it's Chair Byard. I think he's retiring at the end of the year.
Okay, that I thought that someone was stepping down or whatever, and there was some optimism around that, I guess is the best way to put it. But from a conservation standpoint, like, I don't pretend to be a biologist. I don't, I just look at things from like a litmus test, like you read the room, right? And, I have family in the UP, we hunt in the UP, and you get that mentality. You see, I have friends that hunt private around here and like in the lower part of the state, and they do all the food plots, and they have much different standards than I do. And then, I tend to surround myself with the public land warriors, and I just enjoy for me, it's everything. If I like what you outlined there, you go into a spot first time, go in blind, and the deer's there. And I mean, I even get that like to some degree, like when I put out a camera, but like if the deer's there, and like, it's just a validation that like I'm right, that all these million decisions that you make into going to sit there, but like, that's all it is. So to look and say, okay, well, 4 on a side. I mean, let me tell you something. Our property in the UP has always been, like I said, for the last 30 years, has been 3 on a side, even before it was the rules. And most of our neighbors did like 4 on a side. And this is a UP where, we had a high deer density for a while, then we had low deer density, and, it's kind of back and forth. You talk about trophy hunters. I've got the kid, our cousin, who's doing most of the property, running the equipment and, running the tractors, managing the property. He wants to kill something to put on the wall, and he's got big deer around him in Wisconsin. So they want to do a 5 on a side rule on our property in the UP that has weak genetics. And it's like, come on now. We have to have like some semblance of, because my dad had a I don't know, I would say like a 130s 8-point, just beautiful, mature, sway back, giant bellied deer that only had 8 points. And it's like, how do you, had 4 on a side, like, how do you not shoot that deer? Like, how is that not a trophy? And, we use that word trophy and trophy hunting, but like my daughter killed a 3-point up there last year, and it was the greatest day of her life, and so that's a trophy to her. And so I've got a middle brother who's killed, I think, 3 bucks in his life that if you scored all 3 of them together are about 45 inches. And so to take a racked buck off the table for him is a whole nother thing than, a guy that's, even someone who just travels out of state to see like what big deer what deer have the potential to do, I guess, is the other thing of it. And so all of that to say, like, it's really tough to just say like 4 on a side, when there's guys that have never even seen an 8-point in the woods. So it's like, who is this guy? He's passing giant deer in Illinois, and he wants to come on here and say, we need to do better in Michigan. Like,
Well, it's all relevant to the area you hunt too,
Yeah.
right? Like you can sit here and talk to me about the UP all day long. I wouldn't even touch it because I don't hunt the UP. I've never hunted the UP. I only talk on what I know and what I see and my experience. And I'm in the woods like all year long. Okay. I'm one of those guys. I just love it. So again, I know everybody's not like me. I know there's quite a few of us out there, but I'm also realistic. And that's why I said, I'll glass all year long. And if this is the property I want to hunt and the biggest deer I can find is, just wider than the ears, it's a success. But I usually have no problem finding an 8-point on a piece of public property. It's tough to have that discussion with somebody who struggles getting on deer, right? But that's the goal, is to let these deer graduate of an APR. The whole sole purpose is not to grow giant trophy deer. It's not to make a destination state. It's just to let deer graduate past 1.5 years old. And to me, if we're struggling in harvesting does, and I'll tell you, there's been plenty of times this year where I have been out with the sole intent to harvest a doe and I didn't get one. So, I'm not the world's greatest hunter. But if that's what we're trying to encourage, then I think that we can push that encouragement a little bit further. And let's get this herd management back under control, I guess is my point. Because obviously the biologist thinks that our deer population is too high. We pay him. Whether or not you like it, I like it, people like it, we're paying this man as an entity of the state to make these decisions for us. And whether or not you like him personally, honestly, I think you got to have a little bit of faith in that. And they're trying to tell us something here. NRC's not helping him with the cause when they're just making it easier to kill bucks. So I think we need to my whole thought is like, let's just step back a little bit. Let some of these bucks graduate, kill some does in the process. I love shooting does. Not to sound crazy, but there's nothing wrong with that. But we've created a culture here where it's almost taboo to shoot does. And I think it's really strange. Like it's no fun. People talk like, oh, well, they're not going to let the kids kill bucks during youth season. I'm not going to take my kids hunting. Well, you're only hurting yourself, right? And I'm not saying I'm for or against that. I still haven't really made my mind up on that. I think we ruined that for ourselves because I think we were harvesting almost.
Way to eat its heat. You're listening to an ad for PC Game Pass. Want new games on day one like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle? How about living out your Sims life with EA Play? We're talking high-quality PC games all for one low monthly price. We got you. Learn more at xbox.com/PC Game Pass or click the banner. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle available December 9th, 2024. Game catalog varies by region and over time. Okay, that's the ad. You can go back to doing whatever you were doing now.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Like something crazy, like almost 4-to-1 bucks to does. Like we probably ruined that for ourselves. And almost are teaching these kids they have to shoot their buck. again, with this Michigan culture, you have to shoot your buck. It's pointless to shoot a doe. Man, let a kid shoot a doe and have a good time. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things there. Like one, again, I'll go back to I just shared camp with 8 kids. I mean, like their mindset, like every one of I hunted with like I think 4 or 5 different kids, my nieces and my daughter, and they said, all of them basically, like, it doesn't really matter if I shoot a buck or not, because we're still going to eat it, and it's still fun to go drag it out of the woods. And I think that, and I don't want to be like, oh yeah, we're raising them right, like that. It's just about, harvesting deer. But like, that's like, I'm very fortunate to have grown up almost the way that I did up there, hunting up there, because like it was never, until the last 15 years, it was never about bucks at all. It was just to go shoot a deer, and like we were just fortunate enough that we had a piece of property that had deer on it, and maybe we would see a buck or a good buck, like one on the property all year, but everybody would shoot a doe, and we'd high five and track, and we'd have meat, and it was never ever about that. So it's really easy to kind of show these kids that, hey, there's deer, we'll just shoot them, and this is what we do. We go get the 4-wheelers and the trailer, and we go get them and bring it back and eat the heart and all that stuff. And like that's all they live for, and if one person gets a deer, then they all got a deer, so they don't have to go out in the cold and do it again. It's not about volume. It doesn't matter how big the buck is. It's just about the experience, and I think that, in John, he grew up never shooting does, and his dad would never allow him to shoot does. And, from what Jordan says, and from like the overarching mindset of the UP, like we're in Menominee County. So for the longest time in the the 90s and early 2000s, it was the highest deer density, like in the UP, if not in the entire state of Michigan. So shooting does was not a big deal. Shooting deer was not a big deal, but the rest of the UP, where you have hard winters and wolves and other stuff, they were never shooting does. It was just like, you don't shoot the does. And so, it's a whole nother culture, but that got to get my buck mentality. I don't know. We just never ever had that. And so now, like, going out and hunting and trying to find bucks and stuff, that's for me like where the adventure is, because like to find deer isn't, that's what I grew up, was hunting deer, not bucks and buck beds and rubs. And, if a buck came by, cool, but that wasn't, we were just, if I saw a deer, it was good enough. And so I don't know how to, like, that, I need to get my buck culture. I don't know how we like deviate from that, but we do have, this social media vacuum where everybody's killing a big deer and everybody wants to kill a big deer. But it's almost like the people that aren't on social media are the people that are like, I almost would say like anti-government or anti-establishment or whatever. They're like, I'm going to shoot whatever I want just because you told me I can't. So that's a very difficult thing to navigate.
It is.
Right?
It is. So in all the people that I talk to about this, okay, in all the people that I talk to, I realized we have 3 camps of hunters here in Michigan. We have APR, we have OBR, 1 buck rule, and then we have my tag, my choice, right? Anytime you talk to a guy that is my tag, my choice, call himself a meat hunter, whatever he wants to call it, the first thing that most of them say is the government does not need to have anything to do with my hunting. They don't need to have any intervention than they already do, any more than they already do. And my answer to that is this. They already make the laws. But these three groups cannot sit in a room and hash this out together. Okay? Like, we just can't get along. And by not getting along, we have no voice. We have zero voice. We have no say. They just make the regulations without us pretty much, because they kick out a survey every year that's really, it's like a skeleton of a survey. You know, are you happy with your experience? Yes, no. How many deer did you see? Whatever. But by not saying anything, they're just making the rules without you. They're not going anywhere. The NRC is going to be there until the end of time. The DNR is not going anywhere. They're a needed asset. So learn to get along with them. You know, I wish we had more of them. I really do, because there's guys here that go years on public without seeing a conservation officer. I mean, I think I've seen like 2 in the past couple years, and only one of them has talked to me because I was out scouting in the summertime. They don't even have the manpower to enforce infractions at all. So we blame the DNR for everything. Ultimately, the NRC is the problem, but whatever, even if you want to say that we have a problem. But back to my point, if we're not creating the regulations and having resistance or questioning them, they're just free to do whatever they want. And that's kind of where my point is, because, you know, social media, there's a group on Facebook, Michigan, let them go, let them grow. There's 43,500 members on that group. How many of them do anything? How many of them attend? And like I said, I haven't been to one, but how many of those 43,000 people are involved in, how many of them go to the NRC meetings? How many of them are in the sportsmen's clubs or just vocal amongst their peers, right? There's 500,000, a little bit less hunters in Michigan. What are we doing? We just can't get along with each other. Those laws aren't going anywhere.
That's interesting. Just put that way, and for nothing other than the numbers, if there's 500,000 hunters and 43,000 of them are in one Facebook group, that's very nearly 10%. That's what, like 8%. You know, almost 9% of all hunters are in that group, and yet they can't come together to you know, lobby essentially for that. But I think, you know, again, part of that is the NRC not listening to our biologist, and the NRC, even the you know, having Jordan on here to kind of outline the way that the NRC works and like who's on there and how they're chosen and all that stuff is also, you know, somewhat problematic. And it's good that we have not necessarily brought it to light, because I don't think anybody was hiding it. But I think as hunters, we just buy our tag and we don't look to, you know, how things are being.
That's how they want it.
Well, but I suppose. But like, again, like I'm as tinfoil hat as the next guy. But as soon as you say they, then it's like, well, who are they? Like, you know, what do they stand to gain by having all these does and all these, you know, having no little bucks? I mean, you have, when you say they, you have to have a person who stands to benefit. And that is the thing that I think is lacking in the situation. I think that it's simply a political fear of, if we just do status quo, then they'll just be mad at whoever and we can pass the buck along, instead of taking some sort of ownership and saying like, okay, we're going to piss off, you know, however many people in the short term for a long-term benefit. And I think that that's where the real problem lies, is simply in the fear of the public, clapback or whatever politically, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, if they just let it continue on the way that it's always been, they don't piss anybody new off, right? So it just continues into the spiral. You got the same people mad every year. They jump on Facebook for 3 comments, talk about how they're upset, and then, it's done. But these people are not elected officials either. And I made that comment one day to somebody, and I said, everybody in the NRC should be an elected sportsman. We should have a voice of who's in this office. They represent us, right? We're all, I consider myself, I'm sure you do, a steward of the woods. I am a representative of what's going on in the timber day to day. And that's the way, I kind of conduct myself. I pick up trash, I take care of the woods. And these people represent me, but they don't represent me. Most of them don't. I mean, I've went on a lot of their profiles and things like, it lists just their biography. I don't know a ton about them, but I would like to vote on who's in this office. And somebody said to me, the problem is we don't need any elected officials. And I'm like, well, here we go again with this. It's not going anywhere. There's always going to be somebody in office. The problem is you as a citizen want to have the most control over what's going on in your life as to what's there, and not big government. You don't want Whitmer to get elected this year and she brings in her crew. And then the next governor comes in and they bring in their crew. And this is just going to turn over and be a problem every year. And it's just how I view it. I don't see it as being productive for the sportsman, because I don't know who these people are that represent me. And like you said, most people just go by a tag and it ends there. This year, you could barely even get a regulations pamphlet.
Yeah.
I mean, people were complaining about that, and we posted them online, and, and then you got 10,000 guys on Facebook saying, can I carry a 350 during muzzleloader below the rifle line? And it's like, read the regulations. Well, they're not out. So there's so many problems. And if you've ever watched an NRC meeting, like, they record them. I think the MUCC records them and posts them. Michigan United Conservation. And it's a mess in Lansing. They just, like, the whole thing is like confusing to watch because they're just all over the place. There's no organization. Man, I don't know. It's just mind-boggling watching it.
So
it's wild.
And so the reason that I wanted to have this conversation with you is because you're one of the few people that's actually done something or is like attempting to do something. So you did like a change.org or something like that for the state of Michigan, and like, people who have listened to this podcast this far can like kind of make their own decisions on like where they fall on it. But like, so what have you got out there, and like what's the thought process behind it? Like, what is the ultimate goal?
Okay, so I started a petition just after talking to a bunch of guys and seeing different things, and my experience out of state this year, and everything just kind of got me rolling again. I go through this every year where I'm like, Michigan has to do something, right? And so I started a petition for APRs in Michigan because I want to get people involved. My point of it is not to get 500,000 signatures, send it to Lansing, and get everything changed overnight, right? But my point of it is to keep people engaged with what's going on in the woods. And I just want to keep the topic relevant, that things can change. And if that's through education, if it's through encouraging guys to progress as hunters, maybe pass on that spike and harvest a doe, do things for your area that are going to benefit it. And that's the main reason that I did that. It wasn't to think that I could change the world single-handedly overnight. But I see the large groups of people that are kind of the same thought process, whether it's OBR or APR.
Isn't the point of traveling to get away from it all? To feel the best you've ever felt? then maybe you should check out Aruba. You'll spend your time relaxing on cool, white, sandy beaches and floating in healing blue water. You'll meet locals brimming with gratitude for an island that redefines what a paradise can be. When your trip comes to an end, you won't need another vacation because you just had the vacation. That's the Aruba effect. Plan your trip at Aruba.com.
Gift sport with gifts from Nike. From the retro Vomero 5 sneaker designed with Zoom Air cushioning to fleece engineered with lightweight warmth and next-level comfort, we have the perfect gift for any athlete on your list. Shop now at your nearest Nike store.
You know, at the end of the day, those guys have somewhat the same ideas, right? They want to grow a little bit better age class, restrict, and maybe harvest more does, get the ratio back up. When you get that ratio around 1-to-1, it's a whole different woods. It really is. I mean, bucks behave differently. It's the rut is way more concentrated and crazy, and so yeah, my whole point was just to keep things relevant, and you know, it didn't go crazy, but guys, you know, start talking and they start having conversations, and then maybe you can bring people together a little bit and get those three camps in the room and have these conversations, because that's really what's important. At the end of the day, we're all sportsmen, but we can't sit here and have the attitude of we don't need government in the woods. I'm going to do what I want to do. If I want to buy carrots at the gas station, I'm going to do it. If we don't start creating these regulations ourselves and having these conversations, by creating them, I'm saying, if I'm sitting here and I'm saying I'm not going to shoot, or if I'm asking somebody to shoot something that's 4 points on one side, that's what I'm going to do, whether it's legal or not. That's how I'm going to conduct myself in the woods. If I say don't bait, I'm not going to bait. If I say I'm going to shoot does, I'm going to go shoot some does. We have the ultimate say whether it's in law or not. But I don't see that sustaining for a serious period unless we can get some regulation together in Lansing and push for some things. And, you know, I was kind of deflated when the DMI fell apart last year, and I don't know what's going on with that. But when they didn't get some change passed, I was very surprised, like to the point where I threw my phone in my truck listening to it, and I was just like, what's going on?
Yeah, and like I said, I saw, you know, I don't know if it was like you posting some stuff about it on your story, and then I looked at it and I was like, oh shit, he put it out, and I was like, okay, and I think you're right. I think, and that's what I was curious. I was like, man, does he think he's gonna like change the world, like light this whole thing on fire, or like? But I think, you know, ultimately, to be able to have the conversation in a civil way,
mm-hmm.
and to find whatever that compromise is, even if it ends up being 3 on a side for the entire state, whatever, I'd be happy. Whatever.
I'd be thrilled.
You know, because it's, you know, that way in the UP, it's that way, you know, we've got bigger than that. Like that would be a step in the right direction, I think. And, you know, it is what it is, but to, like I say, to find that compromise, to start the conversation, to open that door. So I like I said, I wanted to get you on here and talk about that. So yeah, I mean, I'll put the link to the petition in the show notes and all that. One thing when I got you on here, I wanted to ask you about. So you guys are doing some filming like together. So what's that whole thing about?
So that so it's started out. There was a couple more of us that just kind of went a different direction, but me and Ryan kind of stuck it out. Ryan Reagan, and you know, I know you know who he is. It kind of falls in line with what I'm talking about, actually, because we said, you know, let's go put something cool together that is just about the season and not about killing a deer. Like, let's put that on the back burner, not worry about harvesting anything. Let's just go through a season and film something, film the adventure. Don't worry about the harvest. And it was actually said when we started talking about this, I said, if we didn't kill anything this year, it would almost be a blessing. Because every time you watch something, it has everything to do with killing something. And I mean, going back to Michigan, that's the whole culture here, right? I killed a buck. That is the number one thing, is I killed a buck. And was kind of our purpose, is like, man, let's just film something where the goal isn't to kill some monster deer that's, unrealistic to a lot of people. And that was really all it was. And we just started, filming stuff. And then, we got some really good deer on film while we were in Illinois. Just hanging out with the camera is pretty much what we've been doing, and just capturing a lot of that adventure that's not necessarily just about killing deer, because it hasn't very little to do with it for a lot of us.
Well, on that, what I would like to see, and I'm going to ask you about it now, but I would like to see a whitetail cribs of the trailer that you built, because you were a back of your truck camping type guy last year, and you built out a utility trailer. So the past 2 seasons we've slept out of state in a I think like 24 foot utility trailer with just some cots in it and kayaks and everything jammed in there. But you've got a full on wood stove, like everything. So tell us what your build looks like, what your out of state rig is.
So it worked great. We went down, me and Ryan were down there for 9 days, and I put that together, not solely for that trip, but we used it for the whole trip. 2 guys, it's not a big deal. It's 7x12. So it's not big by any means, but, I just took a 7x12 trailer. I insulated all the walls with like an inch and a half, pink closed cell insulation, and then, boarded it, put some slat, some tongue and groove, cedar on the walls, real light stuff, and put a wood stove in it. And it's all solar powered. So, I mean, like I said earlier, I'm a weekend warrior. So usually like Friday after work, I'm gone and I don't come home till Sunday night. So I've kind of been crashing in there, but it was perfect for 2 guys. We went the whole week just off solar power and wood heat. And I mean, that's my home away from home out of the season. I just park it on the state land and come back, leave in the morning, come back at night. So it works well.
Yeah. And it's like the build out looks very, very nice. So what prompted the wood stove versus like a buddy heater or just something like, cause I guess I always just feel like there's like some semblance of like mess with like, especially with the snow and wet wood and shit like that. And then like having like a fireplace inside,
So, I put 2 sources of heat in it. I put a diesel heater, like a Chinese diesel heater, Amazon deal in there too. And the point was to use the diesel heater until maybe I didn't have wood or, kind of regulate the temperature with both. But I haven't even fired up that diesel heater all year long. Like the wood stove was just like old school kind of, cut wood while you're out. And again, the experience, it was just like that, almost make it harder on yourself, gritty type feeling. So yeah, that was kind of where that came from. But I love it. I love, going to bed warm, waking up cold because the fire burned out the night. It works. But there was really no rhyme or reason for it. It was just kind of like, I want to be in the woods and cut wood. Is kind of all it was.
Yeah. So if I'm going to have a mobile deer camp, we're having a fireplace.
Oh, you got to have
a wood
stove.
stove. Yeah.
It's pretty much. Plus, you can cook on it. You don't need propane and things like that. You could boil water and make coffee in the morning, and it works well.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I want to see like the whitetail cribs, like full like build out edition. So, but I can't imagine like, so 2 guys in 12-foot trailer, like you have like the bunk beds or.
No, so what we did is I actually when I sold like my camper top setup, I sold the bed platform and everything. It was all wired for like 12-volt power. So I sold that to another local hunter who put it to some use. And then I sold the camper top to a guy. And I kept the mattress off of that bed. It was just like a trifold mattress. It's like 4-inch memory foam type Amazon deal. And I built the bed high enough to where if you put a guy on the ground on the mattress, it's just like long enough between. I put a shower in it too. So there's like a shower over here, and it's a little shower, but it's enough in the summertime, and, so you can lay that mattress down on the ground. And I mean, Brian laid on the ground all week and he was like, man, it's the most comfortable mattress. I can't believe that. So, it wasn't built to take 2 guys on a week-long trip, but it worked. My intention was to put raising bunk beds, and I just ran out of time. I got sick of working on it and screwed some 2x6s together and built a bed. So
yeah. No, I mean, so for us, like bringing kayaks and like the e-bikes and all the stuff, like it's been great. Like, just throw all the stuff in there, and if you don't end up needing it, it doesn't matter because you set it outside. But to bring all that stuff, and like if you were to stay in Airbnb, if you were to do anything like that, it's like now we were just bringing extra stuff, and like we'd have to bring a trailer anyways, or how do we get all this stuff down there? And we end up bringing like a lot more stuff than we need, but especially for a week-long out-of-state trip, like we had everything that we needed. I'll tell you one thing that I can't like believe in, and like maybe it's not a big of a deal to you, but like for me, like the e-scouting and stuff when you get back, and like getting in touch with like people at home. Like when we were in Ohio, like we stayed in like absolute middle of nowhere. There's no service, there's no anything. Tennessee we didn't have very good service where we were at either. And I got one of the Starlinks and I just threw it on top. Like that thing is freaking like incredible. Like,
yeah, I've looked into those a few times. They look pretty cool.
Yeah. And so they have a plan. Like if you're not like watching TV or any of that stuff, which is hard to do, because when you have it, but they have a plan where you only get like 50 gigs for the month, but it's $50. Like it's mobile. So it's like $50 a month. Like you just buy the equipment. And I mean, you think about what you'd spend $50 a month on. If you're in that for, 4 weekends a month, that's like $12. Like, it's probably worth it just to be able to, but like, especially for like e-scouting and mapping and like all that stuff, like, and not, being able to download the map if you're going to go to a different area or stuff like that. Like it's been pretty awesome. So if you don't have that, it's something you should look into for your rig.
And, most of the time when I'm here, and that's kind of why like I've shied away from when I started looking at all that. Most of the time when I'm here, I have cell phone service. I feel like in Michigan, UP is different. Very northern Michigan can be different. When you get in like Pigeon River and all that, it's all a lot different. But most of the areas like mid Michigan and below, you can get service in most of the, state land. So never really had too much of an issue. Like there's a TV in there, I'll hotspot it off my phone and just watch YouTube, or Onyx sometimes connect my phone to the TV. And
well, even for our like Patreon hunt camp, like up there's no service where we camp. So there was a guy who had an electric truck, like a hybrid truck, and he had the Wi-Fi. So and then he left and went to a wedding. Like, thanks, James. And then we were like, how the hell do we check our maps? Like, where's everybody going? Like, what's going on? Like the internet left. So that played a part into it, but you can shut it off month by month. So that's
nice.
Yep. So that was like my main reason was like for those types of situations. But I mean, I don't have a shower. We didn't have any of that stuff. So
yeah,
I mean,
well, the shower is nice to have. Like when I was summertime scouting, like a couple of those days it's like 90 plus degrees outside, and it's nice to like get back like cold shower. But I don't think I've fired it up all winter long. It's just been sitting there and it is a closet basically. But yeah,
But yeah, so where could people go check out like your Instagram? Because I know that the trailer's on there and all that stuff, and then with what you guys are filming, like what's that page as well?
Okay, so my personal Instagram is the non-typical, the non_typical, and then the film page that we're just kind of throwing content up on, that is Define Your Own Path. And that kind of, like I said, that just kind of relates to the hunt, and it's not all about the kill. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I mean, like I said, you've been one of the voices that's at least been backing up what he's been saying. You know, it's not just a keyboard warrior saying, well, do whatever, you do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. And I think, you know, to some degree, we're all guilty of that, but we'll be looking for you on the live stream of the NRC meeting. So
yeah, I plan on being there quite a bit this year coming up. So
well, awesome, Josh. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.